Hello, everyone. I've been covering supports that can heal in the support role, and I am going to really quickly take a brief moment to talk about mage supports that can heal that I don't recommend you play as supports, and I'm going to go over very quickly why. Because there are very specifically 5 mages that are capable of healing that you might be tempted to bring to the support role that I don't recommend. And there's also going to be 2 mages that can heal that I will be covering in the future, and I will be talking about why they are effective in the support role when the rest of these mages that I'm about to talk about are not effective in that role. And the first one I want to talk about is, in fact, Hades. Now, Hades used to be a guardian and therefore was played in the support role very often, and he can heal people via Devour Souls. The problem is that any allies that are looking to be healed by Devour Souls have to be right next to the victim of detonation, right? The actual person taking damage. They have to be right next to that person. That is, first off, very risky. Second off, it is a very, very small area indeed that they are able to get healed by, right? Now, Hades is in fact a decent support besides this. However, when I do cover Hades' support, it will not be from the perspective of a healer's support, because quite honestly, you have to be in a party communicating with your ally to get this to be a consistent heal, because otherwise you will find that you are not going to be healing very many people, if any people at all. In fact, this is not a well-known point of Hades of Devour Souls, that not everyone knows that this can even heal. I still, every once in a while, whenever I play Hades and I accidentally heal someone through Devour Souls, people are surprised. They'll still occasionally message me, hey, why did I get healed? Well, actually, they just put it in the group chat wondering why they got healed, and I'll just say, yeah, Hades can heal people. Newsflash. Honestly, I'm not even saying that sarcastically. Not a lot of people, I can't say that. There is still a proportion of the player base that does not know technically Hades can heal. And the reason why not a lot of people know that is because it almost never happens, right? So I will be covering Hades, but not from this support standpoint. All right? That's the first thing. The second thing is Hell. I've seen a lot of people try to play Hell in the support role. There are several problems with this. All right? The first problem is her complete lack of legitimate crowd control. She is in possession of a single slow, which is hindered the dark form version of her second ability. This is a slow. It is also a magic protection reduction, which is nice, but this is also her only form of crowd control, right? That's the first problem. Second problem, yes, the light stance does in fact provide increased protections to allies, 225, which isn't bad. However, the problem is that you're not going to be spending all of your time as the light stance. Even as a support, you're going to want to be switching to the dark form to, at the very least, throw out a hinder. Thirdly, the repulse, or actually the light version is inspire. This is a very small amount of healing over a extended period of time, so it's a bunch of small heals overall. Now, this is nice and all, but the problem with just healing, and this is the same problem that afflicts Chang'e as a support as well, Chang'e has the same issue. The problem with justifying someone being used as a support just because they heal is a trap, because anti-healing is so easy to incorporate into most builds that the people building anti-heal aren't really sacrificing anything to build that anti-heal. And once they build that anti-heal, you basically aren't healing that much, right? You're healing so little, it's not worth it. So for this particular reason, Chang'e, Hell, and Ra as well all aren't effective enough as healers to justify being used as supports. Furthermore, another flaw of them, which is the deal breaker in my opinion, is the relative lack of hard crowd control. I just talked about Hell not having any hard crowd control. She, in fact, only has a slow. She also has a protection reduction, which from a support standpoint is nice, and in light stance she can provide healing and, of course, the increased protections. But at the end of the day, the healing is no longer enough to justify somebody being in that support role because it's just too easy to build anti-healing and have it be very effective. This is the same problem that plagues Ra. Chang'e has a stun on her ult, but that is about it. Ra has no crowd control beyond the slow on his blind at all, right? It's an unfortunate circumstance, but I would really recommend away from Chang'e, Hell, or Ra as mage supports because they're just not really great at it compared to the two mages that I'm about to mention, which would be, very specifically, Iset and Baron Samedi. Now, Baron Samedi, in fact, does have a form of hard crowd control. In fact, he's got two compared to his allies that have none, or in Chang'e's case, one. He has a route on the danger nodal here. It's not a long route, and it is a bit of an odd route since it's technically a slow to route, but at the end of the day, it is a form of crowd control, right? Secondly, he has the stun out of he's got a stun and a sort of movement ability in Life of the Party. So you have, of course, two forms of hard crowd control there that a lot of the other mages don't have, right? Same thing with Iset. Her ult can heal, right? But she also has Dispel Magic, which silences enemies and reduces their magic protections, and she's got a stun. In other words, she's better at supporting. She's basically the better Hell, right? She's trading out consistent healing for a longer term heal in her ult, but she gets to stun, and she also has a silence/protection reduction. Well, in this case, she has a silence attached to her protection reduction or her protection debuff. Hell does not. She has a slow attached to her protection debuff. So Iset is actually, in terms of supporting, fairly decent at the role as well, in a lot of ways where Hell is not. So if you are feeling like, oh, I should play Hell here, play a nice Hell support, pick Iset instead. She's better at it, all right? The final kind of note on this particular subject is Oloran. He does have the ability to heal via consecrations. He also has the ability to gain protections from this. But again, the point of this is ultimately to not really necessarily... Well, in this particular case, the point here is to make him a little tankier. And he's got some good offensive options here. But he is, quite frankly, despite his ult here and consecration being, relatively effective compared to a lot of other things in terms of healing. It does damage, or it can do damage, it heals, it increases his protections. At the end of the day, because of how the rest of his kit works and how aggressively damaging it is, it's not often very effective for Oloran to build as a support, especially since if you build enough power, you get magic criticals, which is a really big deal and a huge part of how he plays. So building him a support method in a very unique way, unique from the rest of the potential mage supports, is basically shooting him in the foot. He really is not that effective in his role as a support because he's basically only using half his kit. Touch of Fate isn't giving him the critical chance, and Focus Light is not taking advantage of that critical chance. So, I also recommend steering away from Oloran for supporting as well. Now, an interesting case is Aphrodite, where she still potentially has some potential as a support, and this is something I've been very back and forth on as the meta has changed. This is something that I am experimenting with. Aphrodite, out of all of these mages, is the one that I've always been the most interested in, simply because her dynamics, her gimmick is to be attached to somebody. So there have been times where I've found her very effective as a jungler. There are times where I've found her very effective as a support, and then there are times where she's not as effective as a support and better as a regular mage. And then there's just so many different weird connotations to her abilities in terms of positioning and ally availability that maybe she'd still make a good support. I'm still running tests in the background on this because she's a very complicated god to talk about role-wise. So I'm going to put an asterisk on Aphrodite right now. I can't quite tell you yet whether or not I would recommend her as a support. I'm still kind of working that out, how effective she is as a support, right? But that's about all I wanted to really say here, why I'm not going to be focusing on all of the mages that can heal. Short answer is TLDR. A lot of them don't have enough crowd control and frankly aren't worth building out of your way into tankier builds when that's going to nerf a certain amount of their healing. So that's really not going to work there. But besides that, they have no hard CC to accent that healing, unlike everyone else I've really talked about here, or some other way of really being very effective, right? Now you might be wondering, well, Guan Yu has a slow and a stun, and Hell has, no stun, but she's got a slow, and yet she also has a protection boost. What's the difference? The difference is that Guan Yu is a warrior and so has higher baseline protections and has a much easier early game. The problem with playing mage supports in general is that your baseline protections are so abysmally low that it's very easy for you in the normal point of supporting, obviously, it's very easy for you in the early stage of the game to die, right? It's very easy to keel over as the wrong mage supports. So some have to accent their kits with specific items, some don't. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to really quickly address the mages I wouldn't be covering in this particular sort of train of thought, right? So with that being said, thank you all very much for joining me. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, or requests, please leave them down in the comment section below. And thank you all very much for joining me, and have a great 24 hours.